Hello, welcome back to the Andy Holding Speed Figures YouTube channel with our resume of the Cheltenham Festival 2021. Sam Turner here with you and co-host Andy Holding, as you see in situ, waiting to digest the numbers and filter through the sectionals and overall times that we managed to accrue from last week. Andy, you enjoyed the week? It was a bit different, wasn't it?
It was, yes. Watching it from home for the first time ever, I think. I can't remember the last time I did. I think I've been going with yourselves for now 25 years. So it was a new experience. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Had more chance to absorb it. And it didn't fly by like it does when you're at the race course, because literally one race runs into another. It was quite nice to actually run the tapes back, review them on the day, and then perhaps review them a little bit further down the line, like I haven't done a few split screen sectionals is the norm, and yeah, they're quite revealing as the days went on.
Yeah, okay, and I think it's more 30 years. I hate to put a few years on you, but
yeah,
it's
probably is. 30, yeah, you're right.
Unfortunately. Let's get cracking then with day one, and the obvious curtain raiser is the Supreme Novices Hurdle. Appreciate it. Very, very strong in the market in the days leading up to the race, certainly the 24 hours before. The 6 to 4, 11 to 8, when we were chatting, sort of a day or two before, or even on the night of the race, that sort of disappeared, and he produced a performance of complete authority to win by 20 odd lengths, albeit aided by a late faller.
Yeah, bookmakers got off to a bit of a hammer blow, didn't they, in the first, back to the exclusivity of everything else in the race. I think it was more of a case of punters realising that he probably would win, barring something catastrophic happening, because he'd looked the best horse going into the race. As we pointed out our numbers, the race looked as though it was going to set up perfectly for him, and the ground, as it was, as we thought at the time, good to soft in places, was probably going to be more appreciative to him than several others in the race. As it turned out, it was a bit of a cakewalk, wasn't it? For Pleasure went off in front. He just tracked him through. He picked the running up coming down the hill to the second last, and by that point, pretty much everything had either pulled itself into the ground or just wasn't travelling at the same kind of level that he was, and he powered clear to win by, I think it was 25 lengths in the end.
Yeah.
Named the distance, and straight away you thought, well, it's got to be a good time on the clock.
And it was better than anything he'd recorded before. We got him at 75.
Yeah.
The circuit time wasn't spectacular, but he was being eased up from a long way out. And if he was yours, what would you do with him next year?
It's a difficult one. I think because of his size, his structure, and his relentlessness, and he hasn't got a turn of foot, I would probably go the Arkle. I'd say they'd send him over fences and run him in the 2 mile championship over fences next season. A lot depends, of course, what connections or particularly Willie Mullins would want to do. Has he got another serious contender? He probably might have. He might have a certain Fernie Hollow waiting in the wings. Of course, his Bob Ollinger form line doesn't look too bad, and his appreciated form doesn't look too bad, does it, in the Coalite Day?
Yeah.
He's probably almost catapulted himself into champion hurdle reckoning almost by default, because he wasn't there, but he's been represented by proxy. The likes of Appreciate It and several others, and Bob Ollinger. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see what the Willie Williams camp will do. My prediction is that Fernie Hollow will go down the champion hurdle route and Appreciate It will go over fences.
Yeah, and talking of crack 2 mile chasers, we didn't have to wait long to see Shishkin win. One of just 5 UK winners on the week, arguably the easiest, goes without saying. And his circuit time and his overall, yet again stamped him a top class performer over fences.
It did. The race rather fell apart. It didn't pan out exactly as we thought. We thought Old Man kind of got off in front, but we didn't really expect Captain Guinness to eyeball him down the back, and probably that was Nico de Boinville's Christmases all come at once, because he just had the luxury of just tracking the pace. He sat 4 or 5 lengths off it. I don't think he probably could go with him, to be honest. But the stamina was going to kick in like he did in last year's Supreme. And once they'd come down the hill, there was only ever going to be one winner. His overall time was, in and around what he'd already done before, so he didn't need to have to improve. And the only real guide we've got, I suppose, you couldn't really you couldn't really look at or judge the Vintage Clouds race on the same day, nor the Galvin race, because there were 3 miles and 3 mile 60s. Yeah. But what you could do is perhaps line him up with the day after and look what he did compared to the champion chase, and more importantly, Monkfish. And if you did the like for like circuit times, he was about 5 lengths slower than Monkfish on the last circuit. So when we get on to day 3, it just shows you how good Monkfish was.
Okay.
Day 2, beg your pardon.
Day 2. We won't go through every race, one by one, but it would obviously be, careless of us not to even mention the Champion Hurdle, which produced a spellbinding performance really from Honeysuckle. She recorded her career best speed figure as well in the race. So 2 miles on genuinely decent ground, or just the easy side of good, clearly played to her strengths. Yeah,
her meteoric rise on the time figures that we've got has been incremental, as in it was 73 prior to Leopardstown, 76 at Leopardstown, and then an 80 in the Champion Hurdle. And she's right up there with some of the best times we've had in the last sort of 5 or 6 years. She could run a faster overall than Appreciate It. Her final circuit was roughly between 10 and 15 lengths quicker than Appreciate It, and she was also quicker from 3 out to the line as well, to the tune of roughly the same distance. So she really did turn it on from that point onwards. A worthy winner, a quality winner, and it's hard to see her not being a short price favourite come next year if she has a similar trouble-free passage.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, she goes on any ground. It doesn't matter how the race sets up, does it? I mean, she's not tactically held as hostage. She can go on, she can drop in, she can make the run in, she can show that exhilarating turn of foot again, and she clearly suits. I mean, she's just absolutely bomb-proof, and she's 11 from 11, so we're yet to find a chink in the armour, aren't we?
Well, Sam, yeah, and you're looking at what horse is going to be coming through. Maybe a Triumph Hurdle winner, maybe a Calixios, maybe a Bob Ollinger if they drop it back, but that's unlikely considering Bob Ollinger's housed in the De Bromhead camp. It's hard to. It always is very difficult when something's won so impressive, like Epiton last year. Then what can beat Epiton? But things do change, and sometimes they do catch you unawares. But at this very moment in time, her profile is unflappable.
Yeah, let's move on to day 2 then, and absolutely thrilling day's action really. Starting off with Bob Ollinger, Monkfish, Heaven Help Us, was an unbelievable winner of the Coral Cup. Put the kettle on, obviously won quite a dramatic champion chase in a modest speed figure, admittedly. Tiger Rollbound's back to form. Sky Pirate just about held off Entucas, unfortunately for me. And Sir Gerhard came out the best of the main Willie Mullins contingent in the bumper. But I think for me the performance of the day, I know speed figure wise it didn't suggest it was, but Bob Ollinger's performance in the Ballymore, where he destroyed 2 very, very useful horses in their own right, was exceptional, I thought. Yeah.
It looked going into the race, or we felt as though it was a 2-runner race, and that's not being disrespectful to Brayman's game, but the figures certainly pointed towards a solid match between the 2 Irish giants, Galliard de Mesne and Bob Ollinger, and in the end it was a 1-horse race with Bob Ollinger coming out on top. Didn't think Galliard de Mesne did anything wrong. Arguably, I thought he had the cleaner run through. But Bob Ollinger was just messed around a little bit. I think Rachel Blackmore was trying to get cover here, there and everywhere, and couldn't really kind of get him in perhaps to the position she wanted. I don't think she was always 100% comfortable, but the horse was basically, once I bailed her out of trouble, but he's just got such an amazing engine that he was able to overcome, let's say, 1 or 2 difficulties in the race, and that's probably the best way to put it. And sky's the limit for him, isn't it, Sam? I don't really know what they're going to do. The dust hasn't settled yet. They might go to Punchestown. He looks a chaser. They bought him as a chaser. But then does he go down the Arkle route? Does he go down the Marsh Chase route? Or do they give him a year over hurdles? Or do they? I don't really know. It's a head scratcher, a bit of a dilemma. But, I think once his name's down on the sheet as being, right, that's the target, or this is the way we're going to go down, then he's not going to be one to oppose in a rush, put it like that.
No, although his Irish form over 2.5 on stiff tracks with plenty of cut in the ground, he just doesn't look a headbanger, does he, over 3 miles particularly? He looks as though he's got plenty of speed, just visually. I mean, obviously I've not ridden him, but just to our eye. I was going to say untrained eye, but he's trained in a little bit. That he stepped up on what he'd done before. I think with the 73 rating, wasn't really hard pushed to do it. You always got the impression if they'd have gone a stride quicker, he'd have been more than happy, because he's tanked through the race a little bit like Gellard de Mesnil. But whereas that horse has sort of hit a flat spot and then run on, this lad's just sprinted away from them, showing almost like a 2-mile pace, really.
Yeah, I mean, just because they win a point-to-point and they are bought from as a chaser, sometimes it doesn't work out that way. They show that much speed that when they're actually under rules and racing in a proper environment, as it were, that they actually almost turn themselves inside out. And we've seen horses like Isterbrack win this race. Plenty of horses who have won it have dropped back. Hardy Eustace as well won this before he went on to be a champion. So it's not an absolute impossibility. Like I said, the only thing that is in the way, and it is a big issue, and that's that Honeysuckle is trained by Henry de Bromhead as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, well, let's part that race then and move on to Monkfish. Now, the curious case of Monkfish in some respects, because unless you do the figures, you watch the race, you're largely unimpressed. You think, fair enough, he's won by 6.5 lengths. He's beat a couple of Tizard horses. Nothing else really got in the race. As a spectacle, it wasn't particularly exhilarating, was it? He didn't jump with his normal fluency or his exuberance. He made an early error at the ditch. Seemed to unnerve him a little bit. There just seemed to be a bit of nervousness and tenseness around the whole ride as well. You know, it's almost as if we've got everything to lose here and nothing to gain. And that was sort of an adage for the performance, really, a description of the performance. But when you look at the figures, an 81 time figure, you know, a subpar circuit time as well, he's again managed to record on the figures what we believe he's capable of.
Yeah, I think you summed it up perfectly there, Sam. I think horse and jockey were just not in a perfect harmony, were they, on the way around? I think not every time, but at least 4 or 5 times, Paul Townend has gone to see a stride. And normally you'd probably expect Monkfish to pick up, but he didn't. He just put down, whether it was the track, he wasn't too sure himself or what, I don't know, away from his home comforts of Leopardstown. But just that aside, the mistakes aside, it was quite a remarkable performance based on the clock. He clocked the joint fastest time of the week, faster than last year's RSA winner, Manila Indo, clocked an 80. We got this fella doing an 82. And we also got him running the last circuit roughly around about 10 lengths quicker than Put the Kettle On. He also would have beaten Shishkin as well on the final circuit the day. So this fella has got that 2-mile sort of cruising speed in the way he goes around, and he also stays the trip extremely well. You only have to look at the way he powered up the hill after making that mistake at the last fence as well. He's a bit of a freak, isn't he, Sam? I think. You know, he should get the 3 Mile 2 next year, no problem. You'd imagine that the Gold Cup track could actually suit him better. The fences come up a little bit more in a more rhythmical fashion, don't they, down the back? That longer straight suits him rather than the tight nature of the old course. He's as we predicted when we were doing our preamble going into Cheltenham. This fella coming out of Cheltenham is a bona fide Gold Cup contender and a worthy favourite at this moment in time.
Just to say that he actually did an 81 in winning that, and we do have 2 chasers who've done an 82 later in the week, but obviously, you know, that 81 for a novice, where you're thinking it's a small field race, you know, it's not a the Ryanair and the Gold Cup are the cream of the crop. You couldn't say that field was the cream of the staying chasers either side of the Irish Sea, could you? You know, there was one outstanding horse, a couple of very useful ones from the Tizard camp, and, you know, the rest of the field was a bit of a mix and match. So to clock 81 in the manner that he did, with plenty of improvement to come and plenty of, well, you know, he looked like a rough diamond, didn't he, a little bit? And I wonder whether it was, you know, there's a number of factors. He only sort of scrambled in 12 months ago in the Albert Bartlett, and you know, staying away from home, running at Cheltenham. It might be that he's not a huge fan of Cheltenham. But he wins because of his class and his substance and his ability. Gets him through those sort of negatives, really.
Yeah, and we're likely to see him at least more times than we do album photo. I think he'll go down the Leopardstown route. He'll run in the Savills Chase. He'll go to the Dublin Chase. He might have one before, I don't know, before Christmas. Who knows with Willie Mullins? But if he gets through those tasks and comes through, then you'd imagine he's going to line up at Cheltenham a very, well, not say a very short price favourite, but he's only going to go one way in the market, isn't he? He's likely to get small fields as well to beat, which up until now, that's what he's done over fences.
We'll touch a little bit more perhaps on the anti-post market for the Cheltenham Gold Cup, a little bit touch later on. But we are starting to get some strength in depth for next year's Gold Cup already, and obviously Envoy Allen, we're not sure where we are with him, but a little bit more of him perhaps as we progress through these podcasts and vlogs as the season wears on next year. But moving on to day 3, and obviously Allaho's performance on the figures, an 82, doing what you feel that he could have done perhaps last year in the Marsh Chase had he been in that race. But all of a sudden, the form champ accepted of that RSA from 12 months ago is looking red hot, isn't it? From most of the season wondering whether, Minella Indo was ever going to make the grade or whether Allaho was going to be anything special. 2 performances Cheltenham week already suggest that, it's a fabulous race and one to follow now. Yeah,
the penny finally dropped, didn't it, with connections with Allaho, that 2.5 miles is a trip. It took him a year to work it out. I think we could have probably told him the year before that the Marsh Chase was probably his race, but anyway, that's by the by. And we've had to wait a year to see the real Allaho stand up, as the song goes. He was pound for pound probably the pick of the performances for the week for me, and that includes Minella Indo and Monkfish. It was such a destructive display, wasn't it, from start to finish, of brute force and powerful galloping from the front. Having done the like-for-like time with Chantry House and compared them after the first fence that they jumped, because don't forget they jump one less fence down in the marsh than they do in the Ryanair. But if you set the clock or the video from that point and then stop it in front of the stands, there's 30 lengths difference between Allaho and Chantry House. And that's where Allaho did his damage. He could have damaged himself running that fast, but he kept going, didn't he? I thought Rachel Bratmore actually a very cute ride. She got to the top of the hill, slowed it down a little bit, gave him a chance to sort of pause for air, and then she kicked on again. And while the others were sort of half semi-looking as though they were catching him up, off he went again. A truly remarkable display. You'd certainly have to commend those in behind that chased him in vain, like Fakir Duduris and Tornado Flyer. You'd certainly be interested in them perhaps next time out over in Ireland without Allaho in the race. But yeah, he was just amazing, wasn't he? And again, you're looking towards next season, you're thinking, well, the Ryanair is his for the taking, because there's nothing over 2.5 miles that can touch him. Maybe Envoy Allen, if they don't go down the Gold Cup route, might have something to say about that. But if he were mine,
would you come over for a King George?
Well, this is the temptation, isn't it? They would think, if a sharp 3 miles around Kempton, but you still stakes them getting the Kempton trip. So I've seen horses such as Allaho not get home before around Kempton. I'd actually almost consider dropping him down. He's that quick. You could almost consider him the champion chase. I think he's a better horse than Chacun Pour Soir is. Because Chacun Pour Soir didn't get up the hill in the champion chase, in the slowly run champion chase, so he's got no chance of winning a champion chase. But Willie Mullins will probably think, well, what have I got in each category now? He's still got album photo in the Gold Cup, arguably. Is he really that bothered about a 2.5 mile winner? Is he? I don't know. Whereas I think he'll want to try and lay the hoodoo of not having won a champion chase. That's got to be playing on his mind. He must have had about 15 goes at it.
I think he's not from 11 now.
Not from 11 for someone like him. It's the one race where it seems to elude him every year. So I think Allaho's probably got the best chance of laying that ghost to rest.
Yeah, doing a one-man, stepping right back in trip quite markedly. Yeah. And obviously his circuit time wasn't anything out of the ordinary, but that was hardly surprised, was he? I mean, he was almost like Marvin Hagler in equine form, really, wasn't he? He was just dealing combination after combination, and one by one, whether it be Mellon or Mr. Fisher, they made errors because they just couldn't go the speed of that sort of first 2 miles, really.
Yeah, it was like the Tommy Hearns Hagler fight, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yesterday, wasn't it, when the two of them went at it for the first round, as if it was the last round, and yeah, he like I say, the overall, he was going to have to slow down at some point. That's why when you do the circuit time, it doesn't come out. But when our subscribers look at it, it comes out as a minus. But as I said, if you actually flip it the other way around and run it further back, he's done the damage early on. Like I say, he's 35 lengths ahead of Chantry House before they've gone down the far side. So
to record an 82 and have a circuit time of sort of plus 3.2, it just shows you really what the first portion of the first section of that race must have been. You know, and I'd almost afford one or two horses that finished in behind, you know, a free pass for that, because they're probably being asked to go quicker than they've ever had to go before in championship standards.
Yeah, I mean, it took the breath away of good horses who've been used to been running at sort of grade one level. Mellon literally was up, you know, on his head like after two fences. Sam Crow was pulled up down the back straight. I mean, he's got a bit of a heart of a pea now, so hardly surprising there. Mr. Fisher, Imperial Order, you know, good horses are waving the white flag at the top of the hill, unheard of really, and that was the kind of brutality that Allaho administered to them.
Indeed. Right, let's get on swiftly on to day 4 then and wrap this up. We started off with the Triumph Hurdle, which was a curious race in some respects, because I couldn't quite work out what happened to the favourite. The overall time wasn't anything special. The circuit time wasn't anything special. So the 8 runners really didn't produce an all-out championship gallop as such. And, you know, it was disappointing really that Zanna here, you know, having travelled okay, just hit that flat spot and then just looked laboured in the ground that he did make up the hill. Yeah,
I think there was two, I think, masterclasses. Well, there was 3. There was the Allaho ride, but the 2 masterclasses for me from Rachel Blackmore were the 2 front-running rides. When she rode them to sleep in the bumper, Kilcook was probably the best horse in the race, but didn't get a chance to shine. And I think her ride on Calixius was equally cute. They were expecting probably a strong gallop to suit perhaps Calixius, but she decided to slow it down. I don't think it really ended up playing into Zanahar's strengths. He was actually doing his best work at the finish, which suggests he doesn't need a fairy house kind of race when he got that strong end-to-end gallop when he did a 74. I don't think it was quite his best either, Sam. If you're being absolutely honest as well, looking at him, I don't think he was really on the money. But either way, he didn't quite have his conditions to suit. Whereas Calixios just allowed to do his own thing. He quickened up really well, and at least one of those 2 horses we got going into that race with a big number justified our time figures, which have stood the test over the last 10 years.
Indeed, and it you know, unfortunately for the home contingent and Max McNeil, the figures sort of put a fork in Tritonic as well, and you know that those people who sort of lay off the figures as well never really had a moment's worry with him, did they?
No, I must admit he was the one I was pretty confident wouldn't win because of his moderate. No, his time at Kempton was okay, but it wasn't a grade 1 winning time. And it was the fact that Cape Gentleman as well ran 10 seconds quicker than him on that circuit. That's when the alarm bells began to ring for me. I was thinking, well, he looks visually good, but the numbers just don't stack up here. I've seen it time and time again when you get with those wide margin winners, they look brilliant, but the numbers just, there's just something not right about it. And it wasn't a great surprise to me that he run badly or didn't run up to expectations, let's say.
Okay, let's move on to the Blue Ribbon event then. And I thought this year it was an absolute terrific Gold Cup run at an unrelenting pace. There were no prisoners taken, that's for sure. And it fought out. It was really just the theme of the week, really, wasn't it? That Henry de Bromhead and Rachel Blackmore had to be involved in the finish. For Rachel Blackmore fans and those who, I think one bookmaker said if all her rides had won on Friday, it would have cost the firm 100 million. I think that's right, the quote that I got there, 100 million. There was that much sort of hype around her rides by that stage. Unfortunately, she couldn't get the job done on a Plutard, but Minella Indo, a horse that we know very well on this channel, managed to sort of bounce back and looked a much happier horse throughout, as Henry de Bromhead had predicted he would do.
Yeah, it was a race that I'd mixed thoughts all the way around. Sam, as you can imagine, having fancied Manila Indo pretty much for the thick end of about 10 months, I kind of like sort of went off of him a little bit. I probably learned more about myself at Cheltenham not to write horses off after one bad run, such as Tiger Roll and in particular Miller Indo. It wasn't the fall that necessarily bothered me on the day. I wasn't the fact that he fell in the saddles wasn't a problem, but his run afterwards certainly was a problem. I don't think I was the only person to sort of judge him a little bit harshly on his round. But Henry de Bromhead knew what he was doing. It was just a case of getting him round. But I think he was just brilliant at the Cheltenham. He never missed a beat. He jumped fantastic. I knew from halfway, I thought, this lad's on the money today. And conversely, a Plutard made one or two or three even really bad errors along the way around. It was when Rachel Blackmore was asking him to go long and to try and keep up with the pace. The horse just didn't have the physical scope because he's not overly big to really go and ping it. And he put down 2 or 3 times and it knocked him back again. I think had he jumped cleanly or he sat quieter on him and just allowed him to pop and to fiddle, because I think that's the way you have to ride him, I think he might have ended up winning.
Yeah,
that's not to take anything away from Manila Indo, because who left behind his previous run by a long way.
It's the second year running for me that he hasn't jumped in the style of what you need a Grade 1 performer at that level and in that type of race. You need them to produce really proficient precision jumping to keep you in a race when they go in that unrelenting gallop. Manila Indo managed it, but unfortunately, for the second year running for me, a Plutard didn't. And I think you might have hit the nail on the head there. He just doesn't have that scope really to get himself out of trouble occasionally when he needs a big one at the top of the hill, or just to enable him to fill his lungs again and have a challenge, produce a challenge when it really needs it. He's just always seemed to be going half a stride too quick. They seem to be going half a stride too quick for him, I thought, last Thursday.
I think he's got the best engine because...
Yeah, he did incredibly well to stay in touch, didn't he?
Oh, incredible! Yeah, I mean, he's got half a line as well to try and keep up after all those mistakes. He's got a great attitude, will to win. But when you look at him down the start in the collective ring and you watch him go around, he looks like a little pony compared to the rest. It's only then when you say, God Almighty, he's up against proper Gold Cup horses here.
Yes.
I presume he'll come back again. There's no other reason to think they won't. Now he's a 3-miler through and through. Yeah, I think probably Manila Indo will probably always have his measure at Cheltenham because of his size and scope, and the fact that Manila Indo always seems to come to life at Cheltenham. That's now 3 years on the spin that Manila Indo has really turned it on. Albert Bartlett should have won the RSA and a winner of the Gold Cup. So, yeah, I feel as though it was like playing a golf shot, wasn't it, where you thin in, it goes onto the green. It can be qualified as a good bad one.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Now, obviously, some firms, well, every firm has gone up for the 2022 version. Monkfish is favourite with most firms at 5-1. MYLN, you can get as big as 8. Manila Indo, you can get 8-1 with some firms, as short as 5-1 with others. 12 are Plutard. There's pretty much 16, 20 bar them. Alboom Photo 20-1, 25-1. Allaho 25-1. Sort of if you had a free bet voucher, where do you think you might dispense it?
I'd probably split it in half, Sam, and have it on Monkfish and Manila Indo. I genuinely feel as though that once they're the only two that can win, because there's a lot that can happen between now and then, but they seem to have all the right ingredients down there. You've got Manila Indo, who's beaten the best two around. He beat the dual Gold Cup winner fair and square on the day. We know he comes alive at Cheltenham now for the 3rd time. We needed, if we didn't need any more reminding. And the new kid on the block is definitely Monkfish. They're not the greatest prices you'll ever get involved. It's not like last year you can get some 20-1 fanciful value, but I think 5-1 and 8-1 for those two. You could see them being sort of 7-4, 3-1 on the day, couldn't you? If their seasons go the way that they're likely to.
And just looking back at the week, one final thought perhaps. Is there anything you learned with your sort of punting head on that you might do different for 12 months' time? You know, your anti-post approach, your day-to-day approach, the fact that you were at home, could that make certain things easier? Was there anything that stood out to you?
Yeah, it's a good question, Sam. There was only a few little errors along the way that I noticed. There's the usual array of poor picking and ill luck, you know, abracadabra falling, and had quite a few fallers actually. But I think I wouldn't have had. Oh, I'm glad I had the bets I did have in advance. People say, well, you know, you should have a clear mind coming into the festival, and anti-post bets can make you just think one way and not look at the race at face value there at the time. But I probably wouldn't have backed Manila Indo. I might not have backed put the kettle on. I bet them at the right time when I was assessing the race there and then, and I'll probably end up having a few bets in the next month or so when I actually have a proper chance to sort of really look into these races and think, right, that's the wrong price for the champion chase, that's the wrong price for the champion hurdle. I've got an idea already, but I certainly think there's plenty of scope to have bets now, because I think this year's festival is next year's festival form, isn't it? As we've seen time and time again. I think that's the one big lesson, if we didn't all need it, that the trials for next year were this year. But like I say, it's just imagine slotting the right pegs in the right holes, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. On that note, I think that's a good time to wind it up. Thanks very much for joining us tonight. It's been illuminating going through those races with you, and obviously all those figures you can find by looking through the race research page, which is a pretty invaluable page, really. Good that you can compile your own form book off that, so you can use your sectionals, you can use Andy Bates' overall time, so that's good. Got the flat starting as well, so it's an really exciting time of year. We've still got the Grand National to come, and Punchestown and Sandown conclusion, so plenty of stuff still to go out for us punters, isn't there? Sure
is, Sam. Yeah, and it's a good point you make with that research page. It'll certainly help the subscribers in the build up to Aintree, of course. I can look at the times and use them to their advantage, because a lot of those horses are run at Cheltenham. We'll be running again at Aintree and at Punchestown as well. So yeah, plenty to get stuck into in the next couple of months.
Okay, brilliant. We'll leave it there, Andy. Thanks very much for joining us.
Cheers, Sam. Thanks.